Hello and welcome back to Sprite Guard Plays HyperRogue. I'm recording this at the end of a long and very hard weekend. It was like 90 degrees yesterday. It was quite warm today, though we had a thunderstorm to kind of break the heat. So we need just one more emerald and we will be ready to move on to the next portion of the game. I think I'd intended to pick up my 10th emerald before, but I must have miscounted how many we had. I'm not sure. Sometimes that will happen. I will think that I need one more when I actually need two. I'm not sure exactly why that happens. As I mentioned in the previous episode, it's kind of been a long and difficult weekend of recording this, and I'm recording at a time when I don't normally record, just because this has taken so many takes and so much has gone wrong, and I've recorded so much else this weekend. And so I had something that I wanted to say with regard to that, and now I'm completely blanking because it has been that kind of a weekend. But you know what? That's okay. That kind of thing happens. I would like to get out ahead of this rock snake, if at all possible. Really put some distance between myself and it, because those things are fast, and the only advantage we have over them is that we can move through heptagons. And so I will not really feel more confident until we have traveled quite a ways with it off screen. But that did not take very long. Now, I was moving pretty recklessly as I was trying to get away from that rock snake, because my urge to get away from it quickly translated into time, when really I just wanted to get away from it in a short number of turns. But I felt like there was this, because that can happen sometimes in playing games, that I felt like there was this urgency that, of course, did not actually exist. Now we just need one more, and there we go. That is our 10th Demon Daisy, so we are now able to spawn Orbs of Yendor. So the next thing that we want to do is find either a graveyard or an icy land. And we will be able to move around either one and look for something that will allow us to kind of progress in the game. The next thing we need is either an Orb of Yendor with its key in the icy land, or we need a graveyard with some Necromancer's totems that are not too difficult to get to. It's been such a long and weird weekend, and it's been so hot, and now I'm just kind of sitting here knowing that just moments before I sat down to record this episode, I had something in mind that I really wanted to talk about, and I was like, oh, good, I have, a way to structure the next part of the episode, something to be talking about while we're searching for the things that we need in order to progress through the game. And it's just gone. So I do not know how to... Well, I have an idea of how to get a key out of the Land of Eternal Motion, but it's a very slow idea. It would require an alchemy lab, and basically building a slime bridge, which, boy, if the emerald mine strategy took a long time, this would take even longer, because not only would we need to get a particular kind of monster lined up in the right place, we would just need much more of them than we did for the emerald mine strategy. That one is in the forest, which is not very useful to us. Did not see that flail guard, almost got caught. So I think the thing to be looking for is actually a graveyard more than an Orb of Yendor, because we'll have so many more options once we have the 10 Necromancer's Totems, and then once we have the Dead Orbs. That will just really open up what we're able to do. And so I'm going to try and keep my eyes peeled, but I just realized we've only killed 43 monsters somehow, that's not very many for this point in the game. And I don't know why it has happened that way. I think it's interesting that we're so under-leveled for that. And I'm wondering where the best place to get lots of kills is. I think I've been playing very carefully around the edges of a lot of areas, and so I have not been getting into as much combat as I would if I went really deep into, like, the Emerald Mine. And I think that's where I get a lot of my early entrances to the graveyard, is because I go into the Emerald Mine and I really get lost in there. But when we're just wandering around in the crossroads, we don't have a lot of stuff coming after us. And so it's going to take us actually quite a long time to get the kills that we need. And so I'm thinking that the thing to do may be to make our way back to an icy land and go back to just trying to use the icy land strategy, because that is the fastest and most reliable way to get the Orb of Yendor. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to move alongside the icy land, and if we end up getting kills just by being in the crossroads and having stuff come from other lands, then that's great. We'll open up the graveyard. But if we don't, I won't worry about it too much. We will just continue to search for an Orb of Yendor with the key in the icy land, and we have already found one. So let's see if we can get to it. And it could be that we will have to switch land at some point. Having a rock snake after us is going to make things very difficult, but that's something that we will only have to worry about on the way back. It's not something we have to worry about right now. And that rock snake, we should be able to get out of its range soon enough that if my theory about... well, that's going to put an end to that. I think we'd better just go find another crossroads to investigate, because it's possible to get the ore or get the key out of the Land of Power, but it is more risk and more challenge than I really feel ready to take on at this point. And so I want to head back into the crossroads, and now we actually have kind of an undisturbed crossroads edge that we can move along. One thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is kind of trying to get a sense of the scale of this game. And it's kind of amazingly difficult, but I'm gradually developing more and more of an intuition for things. One thing that I did that I would highly recommend trying if you want to really get a sense of the scale of this game is to try to build a pyramid in game board mode, which you press V to get into the settings, and then you press space a couple of times, and that will get you to some kind of odd options. So that's where I believe that's where you activate hardcore mode, and it is where you activate shoot 'em up mode and a bunch of interesting stuff like that. And one of the things that you can activate there is game board mode, and you can just drop down orbs and play around on an empty game board. And so I was just going into this and trying to build triangles on this board, and it is much harder than you might think it would be, because the way that the space curves makes it so that the larger a triangle is, the narrower its angles are. And there's a mathematical term for that. It's called the defect of the triangle. And a triangle that is infinitely large would have a defect of 180 degrees, meaning that when you have a triangle in normal geometry, it has 3 corners, and the angles of those corners add up to 180 degrees. In the world of HyperRogue, the angles of the corners of a triangle always add up to less than 180 degrees. So that's the defect, is how much less than 180 degrees is the sum of the 3 angles. And so for a triangle that is infinitely large, which you can diagram when you use the Poincaré disk, which is what this game uses. You can draw just a triangle out to the edges, and so you can actually draw an infinitely large triangle that way because of the representation that we use. So that infinitely large triangle, the lines would meet at 0-degree angles, because they would meet basically where each of the lines on this is a circle that meets the big circle around us at a 90-degree angle. And so the 3 points of the triangle would be three places where these 2 circular lines would be tangent. And that would result in a triangle with actually a finite area, which is something that I find really intriguing and have not entirely wrapped my head around. But basically, as the angles get narrower and narrower, you end up adding less and less area to the triangle the bigger you make it. And so, when you draw triangles, just finite-sized triangles on the game board, what ends up happening is very, very quickly you start making triangles that are large enough that you can't actually use any of the natural lines on the board. You have to basically treat one line as if it was 2 lines that are just overlapping, because the tiles very quickly don't allow you to make an angle narrow enough to draw a proper triangle. And you can kind of leave a trail behind you without having to worry about running dogs or anything. And so you can really look and see how much your path kind of curves away from you if you go out and then you make a somewhat oblique turn. You end up, the path that you leave behind ends up curving away from you in a way that really kind of heightened my sense for just how much of the area that is around me is unexplored, because I'd always kind of been under the impression that as I'm going through something like the Land of Eternal Motion, what's happening is, as I'm kind of turning and going in various curved paths, I am basically, the way I'm imagining it, or the way I was imagining it, is that I would have a lot of directions in which it would take me, many hundreds or thousands of tiles to get back to where my trail was, and that there would be a few directions in which I could just go forever. And I had wondered about, if there was any way of visualizing how much of the Land of Eternal Motion ends up being truly infinite, and how much of it ends up having dead ends where you would run into your trail. And what I found out by building these triangles on the game board is that actually your trail, if you're making oblique turns or 90-degree turns, if you're not making really sharp turns, or even if you are making sharp turns but not very many of them, what I found out is that the part of the world that eventually dead ends at the hole that you're making is actually very small, and it recedes, and so most of the directions around you are actually fully infinite. There's not any threat that you will, after days and days of travel, eventually end up running into a dead end, which I think is really incredible, and kind of serves to highlight once again just how strange and counterintuitive the geometry in this game is. And I talked in the last episode a little bit about H.P. Lovecraft, and I mentioned that I have read like the first page of Call of Cthulhu, and then just other things captured my attention. I read very slowly, and so it's very easy for me to get distracted while I'm reading. And so I did read the first page, and the first page basically starts out talking about how difficult it is for us to comprehend infiniteness, and how we're basically finite creatures in this infinite universe, and how frightening Lovecraft finds that notion, and that he thinks that it's kind of a mercy that we are limited in how much we can actually think about the universe and how well we can actually comprehend it. So little by little we are getting some kills, but I'm wondering if I should go into an area like Hell, where we can get all of the kills that we need to open up the graveyard so that we can open up more opportunities to get the Orb of Yendor. And as I suspected, as soon as we came in here, we ran into a lot of demons, and we're really getting the kill count up, so we should be able to go into the graveyard. Yeah, we only need to kill 3 more demons to even do that, and we leveled up in our demon killing ability by doing that. So we can now head out to this crossroads, and I just have to touch every Orb of Yendor just out of curiosity. I mean, I don't have to. We often exaggerate the things that we say, kind of because of the way that I grew up, kind of the difficulties that I grew up with. It took me a long time to really understand and appreciate how much of what we say we don't actually mean. Just kind of the sheer quantity of stuff that we say that we don't actually mean. And so, even as I do it kind of habitually, there's a part of me that says, well, you don't actually have to touch every Orb of Yendor. But no, I like to touch every Orb of Yendor and just see where its key is, just think about it. I think it kind of relates in a funny way to my love of maps, and I think a lot of this game really combines well with my love of maps, of looking at worlds and thinking about being in them. And one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about in one of these episodes, and I don't remember if I did or not, was I did a video about Noctis not too long ago, which is the game where you are kind of exploring space and it's very blurry. It's an old DOS game. And one thing that I kind of realized after I'd made that video that I hadn't talked about was that the really awkward controls, and I believe I actually even posted this in the description of the video, that the really blurry screen and really awkward controls actually made it feel more like I was exploring a truly, alien world. It really kind of heightened that sense, because I've seen, Mars rovers, and I've seen kind of the great lengths that they have to go to get imagery from them and to control them. And I think it's gotten a lot better now, but there's a time delay, there's just a lot of stuff that makes controlling exploration on other planets very difficult. And so I think that Noctis, by having the really awkward mouse controls and having the really blurry, low-resolution camera, makes it feel a little bit more like I'm actually exploring another planet. And so then I kind of got thinking more about what it is about it that really... What is it about it that makes it feel like another world? What is it about Noctis that makes it feel more like another world? And I think that I really strongly like this sense of having this mediator in between myself and the other world. And I think that this game actually really captures that as well, because we have a world that literally cannot exist in our world. Even if you have 3 dimensions in which to describe it, you cannot put a surface in 3-dimensional Euclidean space that has constant negative curvature everywhere the way that this game does. And so in order to be able to visualize this world, we have to create a projection. And in order to use that, in order to explore this world, we have to make a lot of compromises because of that projection. That's a lot of very thick ice walls that we're going to have to cut through, but I will try to find the thinnest ones. I don't like standing in one place. I'm always worried that my trail is just going to fade out of view. And I know that I have cut through some very thick walls on this and been able to find my way back, but it's just anxiety. And I find that a lot of times managing my anxiety is easier and more productive than trying to overcome my anxiety, just because it's so pervasive and so overpowering. And that's something that I know that I struggle with, that a lot of people do not struggle with. I know that for a lot of people, overcoming their anxieties is possible and is much more productive. And I know that a lot of times overcoming my own anxieties is more productive than trying to just work around them. But learning to pick my battles has been a slow and difficult learning process, but it's something that gradually I'm learning more and more to deal with. And so managing my anxieties in a game, a silly little game that I play, is, I think, totally fine. I think that it is not a battle worth fighting to kind of face my anxieties. And I'm not even sure how I would deal with that anxiety, how I would overcome that particular anxiety. But knowing that something is safe is not always enough. And I think that that is something that a lot of people don't understand, or maybe they do understand, but they kind of have to not let themselves be completely aware of it, or they just don't have to be completely aware of it because they don't deal with it. And there we go! We have gotten an Orb of Yendor, so I am now going to look for an Orb of Safety, and then in the next part of the episode we're going to probably look around and try to gather some dead orbs, and my hope is that we can get, well, I would like to get more Orbs of Yendor, I would like to get a Grail, and I would like to get Hyperstones. And so, of those 3, I think that Hyperstones would be the most interesting to work on, but that getting another Grail would be the most likely to succeed. But as I think I've mentioned a few times. I don't really like going for the Grail on camera, and I haven't really figured out a way of making that work. And I think it's something that's worth thinking about. I think it's something that's worth talking about. I would love to know if you have any ideas of how I could go after the Grail on a video and not have it be just incredibly boring. Because that's something that I think is well within reach and is something that I would enjoy doing. But I think that what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to go for hyperstones. And that's going to require a lot of really risky plays. It's going to require going into a lot of the most difficult parts of the game. And so it's going to be really uncertain whether or not we will actually succeed. The next portion of this video could end up being incredibly short, I don't know. But I'm going to try to track down an orb of safety so that we can put this on hold. And that did not take care of as much as I was hoping. I was hoping that would kill both of the monsters chasing after me. This looks like an orb of safety. There we go. Alright. So, in the next episode, we are going to gather up the remaining treasures that we need. And we will start working on a Hyperstone victory. So I hope to see you in the next episode, but most of all, thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.